It's something you'll never do again in your life. Salvia. It is the most messed up psychoactive substance in the world. My trip location was my girlfriend's place, a small 2-bedroom apartment, and I was having my 15-year-old brother trip sit me to make sure I didn't do anything stupid. This was single-handedly the most frightening experience I have ever had. I am a noob to psychoactive stuff. The only thing I had done before this was mushrooms, and that experience was amazing. Now this was 40 times as strong. My brother and I drove to my girlfriend's place around 10 p.m. and we quickly got everything ready. But before I tripped, I felt like getting cookied on some Mary Jane. After getting baked, I opened the container of purple sticky salvia and grabbed a big chunk between my fingers. I put it in the bowl, hands nervously shaking, all the while spilling the substance all over the countertop. When I finally had a full bowl of the dark, dry, grayish-green leaves, I got ready to take the hit. I had told my brother to keep me on the couch at all times, as I didn't want to cause any damage to the place while in salvia land. That was a bad idea. I sat down on the couch, hands still trembling, and grabbed it. I lit up the salvia, sat back and held it for as long as I could. It couldn't have been more than 15 seconds later that I started to feel something. Start of trip. Everything in my peripheral vision started rapidly vibrating and it eventually covered my entire field of view. I don't even remember exhaling, but managed to yell the words "Oh dude. Oh dude." Out twice, before completely blacking out for a few seconds. My vision was instantly brought from first person to third person, as if it were scrolling out in a video game. I saw myself on the couch from behind when all of a sudden my body just completely snapped into this taco-shaped object at the speed of sound while hearing a violent crack. After I witnessed this, my vision seems to be scrolling out more. It scrolls out until I can finally see darkness surrounding this square image of what was left of my current reality. I start hearing everything that ever existed all at once, flooding and overloading my brain. I heard every sound frequency imaginable. If I could describe it, it would be like a buzzsaw starting up and reaching its peak, magnified by 1,000,000, multiplied by 1,000,000. The one image of my reality multiplies at indescribable speeds, going and going and going. It finally reached the point where the division of my reality had reached the edge of the universe and I felt every single thing that ever existed at once. Every time I swallowed, breathed, moved, every other reality did the same, however lagging behind me. It felt as though when I swallowed, every other reality would swallow, and I was feeling that for what felt like literal forever. Imagine a life where all you could do is swallow, non-stop, every day for the rest of your life. That is how it felt to do anything on that couch at that moment. It seemed, however, that the swallowing and whatnot was starting to get to some ending point and that my realities had stopped multiplying. I felt so relieved for the slightest moment, when everything disintegrated from top to bottom. That is when I lost everything I knew. As it reached the bottom, I realized there was a picture behind the disintegration. I caught a slight glimpse of what I was about to be in for. It was me, shaped as some kind of rectangle-like object laying completely flat, face up and with my arms at my side. It looked as though my body was stuffed and filled to the brim in a see-through coffin. Not only this, but there were about 20 completely blue men holding this coffin, but holding it without using anything at all. It was just hovering above them, still. These men had very creepy, stern looks on their faces as if they were intent on doing their job. In the background of this image was unimaginable, indescribable colors. Flowing and melding together, sort of pixelated in the way it was done. I witnessed all of this for about 3 seconds before I was literally pulled into the hardest, most forceful, turning and winding feeling at an amazing speed. It was these blue men, pulling me along with them wherever they went. They followed some kinds of roads, that went on for eternities and eternities. It was pure and utter hell. I was witnessing all of this, however I was being zoomed in and out of third person, all the while being flipped and twisted and turned every which way there ever is and will be. I heard awful sounds and screams. After eternities had passed, it seemed as though I had reached a destination. Everything stopped and I went to third person. My coffin, flipped up vertically and slammed extremely forceful and hard into a concrete wall. No wait, I knew what this was. I could literally feel it. This was not a wall, this was a sidewalk. A sidewalk in front of my old house I used to live in, completely out of state. I had become the sidewalk. I could feel every last particle of my being spread across this sidewalk, and it eventually spread onto my old house. I spent decades living in my old house. Everything that it felt, I felt. During this time, I didn't feel so horrible. It was like I had finally felt a little bit of peace and quiet. But this peace and quiet was ripped away from me, when the little blue men came back, somehow grabbed every single particle of me and vacuumed it back into the see-through coffin. I spent more and more time, being forcefully dragged and thrown around by these little blue men into various objects. There came a point where these blue men were taking me somewhere, but it was a very familiar place I was headed, I could feel it. They stopped, flipped my coffin up, but wait, what I was being slammed into was not any object at all. It was a very dark shade of green and blue. I was slammed into this color wall and was able to move. I was no longer in the coffin and it felt as though I was being weighed down by tons and tons of sand. It took every ounce of willpower in me to navigate through this heavy, resistant sand. I started to feel closer to the surface. I wiggled my way up as hard as I could back into the couch and my own body. I was finally back in the real world. Everything looked as if I was seeing every atom and molecule of everything I saw. It was still extremely refreshing to be back. I had never been more happy in my whole existence as a human being. But these feelings were short-lived. As soon as I forced myself to stand up, I was greeted by my brother, who pushed me back onto the couch and exclaimed, "Dude, you gotta stay down." I fell back onto the couch, but shortly after was transported back to right before he said this. "Dude, you gotta stay down." I heard him yell, and then I fell back onto the couch again. This looped for literal forever and I thought I was stuck in this loop state for the rest of my life. I was entirely convinced at that moment that I had discovered the truth behind life, which was these blue men forcing me to live meaningless, slow, painful lives as various objects and that my own brother was in on it. He knew that the blue men would do all of this. He knew they would torment me for eternities on end. I was forcefully dragged back into the blue man world again and lived more and more lives as tables, chairs, water, plants, floors, but these lives seemed to be more depressing and meaningless. They seemed so empty, and eventually I felt as though I died. I completely disconnected from anything and everything there was. I just kinda was. But again, salvia did not keep me grounded in one spot for long. I was hurled into another very familiar scene. It was my old house again, but this time I was inside, in the living room. I saw it vividly. Every detail of it. I stuck my hand out to signal and say, "What the F?" but I stopped. As I looked at my hand and noticed it was the hand of my father. My father is still very much alive, but is troubled deeply and I care for him very much. I started to feel every anxiety he had ever felt. Then next thing I knew, I was in my oldest brother's body. It cycled through endless amounts of people and places, and I felt every single feeling that you could ever experience in your life. It was like getting anxiety times infinity and it was very unpleasant. While all of this was going on, I was hearing loud high and low pitched yells coming from all directions. It scared me and I felt horrible. I am not sure how I awoke, but I woke up drenched in sweat, face down on my girlfriend's couch and immediately started saying no, never again, I am done, dude no. To my brother and then told him I needed water. I stood up and ran over to the sink to drink some water. Everything was still extremely distorted and I took a huge gulp of water and leaned down into the sink. The next thing I know, I'm being vacuumed into the garbage disposal and I wake up on the couch with my shirt off. Still woozy and uneasy, but feeling better. It takes me about 45 minutes to be able to function normally again. I look at the time, and it is around 11:15. The trip lasted a very long time. Longer than I feel it should have. I cleaned my girlfriend's place, drove my brother to his friend's house and kept thinking about the trip. It's been about 3 months since the trip. It really scared me at the time, but I feel as though I value my existence on Earth a lot more now.